Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm excited to share with you a delicious recipe for focaccia bread. This focaccia is light and airy with a crispy golden crust. We'll be using either a sourdough starter or a poolish for those of you who don't have a starter. So I fed my starter the night before, so in the morning it's nice and active, it's airy and beautiful. If you don't have a starter, we can mimic it with a poolish. So we'll add the yeast, the water, and the flour, mix it well, and cover it up. Let it sit on the counter for about an hour. If you want more flavor, put it in the fridge for 24 to 36 hours, and you'll have this delicious mimic of sourdough starter. Whenever I'm making bread, I like to measure everything in grams. So grab your scale and a big bowl, and we're gonna measure as we go along. Here I added 400 grams of water, 25 grams of honey, and 30 grams of olive oil. If you're using a poolish or a sourdough starter, we need 200 grams of it. Mix it all together, then add 530 grams of bread flour and 14 grams of salt. So I like to add the salt on top of the flour and work it with my fingers before I combine it all together. I'm using a dough whisk here, but if you have a wooden spoon, use a wooden spoon because this is a really wet dough and you don't want to get your fingers all doughy. Combine everything together so you don't see any dry flour bits. The dough is going to be sticky and wet, so cover it up with a damp cloth and let it rest for about 30 minutes to 40 minutes. That way it will hydrate most of the liquid and it'll be a lot easier to work with. So after 30 minutes, grab a big bowl of water and make your hands a little bit wet and start folding the dough into itself. At the beginning, it's going to feel sticky, so keep making your hands wet. That way, it won't get stuck to your fingers. And you can work the dough much easier. If you notice, I'm using my fingers to pick up the dough and just let it fold into itself. Do this for about a minute, probably about 30 folds. Then cover it up with a damp kitchen towel and let it rest for another 30 minutes. Now we're going to start the series of 3 folds. So these 3 folds could be every 20 minutes or every 30 minutes. Basically, we fold the dough 8 to 10 times, cover it up, let it rest, and then we'll do another fold and then another. If you don't have 30 minutes, then give it 20 minutes to do the folding. As you're progressing through the folding, you see the texture of the dough has changed completely. It's much smoother and less stickier. I'm going to transfer the dough into another bowl where it's going to go through its first proving. So for the first proving, we've got a couple of options. We can let the dough rest on your kitchen counter for about 2 to 3 hours until it's doubled its size, or it can go in the fridge between 12 to 16 hours. By proving your dough in the fridge, we're slowing down the yeast activity and we're letting the dough develop complex flavors, enhancing the taste, of course. It also strengthens the dough's gluten structure. That way, it has a better texture with a more open crumb. Okay, we're now done with our first proving and we're going into shaping. So the dough should have doubled in size. You see some air bubbles and on the side and on top. I like to grab a baking sheet, put a parchment paper down and a generous amount of olive oil. Make sure you rub it on the side so your bread doesn't get stuck to the pan. Grab the bowl and let the dough just drape down without using your hands. It will fall right off the bowl. Make sure your fingers have generous amount of olive oil on it so the dough doesn't stick to you. So I'll fold the dough like a book, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to flip it over because that's the smooth side of the dough. Use your fingers to open up the dough a little bit. It won't open up completely. The dough is not relaxed yet. It has to go through second proving. So cover it up and let it sit on your kitchen counter for a couple of hours until it's doubled in size, or you can put it in the fridge for 12 to 16 hours. Usually I like to prove at least once in the fridge and once on the kitchen counter. You can also do two proving in the fridge if you prefer. Very quickly, I want to show you how you could divide up your dough if you want to make smaller focaccias. After you do the fold, you flip it over and then you cut the piece that you want. Here I've got two iron skillet with a parchment paper, and I'm gonna let them rest in that. Once we're done with the second proving, we're ready to bake our bread. So preheat the oven at 400, and the focaccia should feel really nice and airy. It should have a lot of bubbles and it should have doubled in size. Use your fingers and dig in really deep. And while you're digging in, push the dough so it spreads out evenly. You don't want a very thick piece of dough somewhere and a thin piece somewhere else. This is a time where you can add your olives, tomatoes, rosemary, whatever you like on the topping. So I like to let the dough rest for about 20 minutes to half an hour before I put it in the oven to bake. Bake it for about 25 minutes until it's nice and golden. Then when you take it out, immediately put it on a wire rack to cool down. Otherwise the bottom will be soggy. And don't cut into the bread when it's super hot. Wait for it to cool down a little bit and then cut into it and enjoy it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and you'll give this bread a try because it is a must. It is so delicious in sandwiches and everything else. Don't forget to check out my other bread videos on sourdough. You can also use poolish instead of the sourdough starter and make the other bread just fine. So don't forget to subscribe and I'll see you guys soon.